TEK 12E is technically also under the polynomial subcategory for these TEKs, but we actually teach it within our linear unit. It is a polynomial standard taught within the linear unit. This TEK says the student is expected to solve mathematic and scientific formulas and other literal equations for a specified variable. This is a lot of words that don't actually translate to what students are exactly going to be asked most of the time. It's going to be more of isolating or rewriting an equation that includes more than one variable. So we're not just solving for x to get a number, we're solving for y to get another expression. So what this might look like is the following. We're given the equation. Notice it has two variables. It has an x and a y. 3x plus 6y equals 54, and the instructions want us to solve for y. This is called a literal equation because it has more than one variable in it. And we're no longer, again, solving for a particular number that makes it true. We're going to be just rearranging it into different usable forms. This is very important for graphing and eventually for higher level math and sciences that you'll get to this skill. So what we're going to do to solve for y is we are going to move or isolate everything, or move everything that's not the letter that we're intending to isolate. So we're intending to isolate the y. We want this guy to be over there on the left side of the equation all by itself. So to do that, we need to start moving things around, and luckily we know how to use inverse operations to do this. Okay, we're going to take the 3x and we're going to move it to the other side. Now to do that, we still use inverse operations. I'm still going to subtract it since it's a positive term, and I'm going to subtract it to the other side. Now, I cannot combine together apples and oranges when I'm making a count of apples and oranges. So I cannot combine 54, which is a regular constant, and negative 3x, which has a variable x attached to it. It's like they don't have the same last name. So instead of doing anything at all, I'm just going to write them down next to each other, like so. Bring down the 6y, bring down the equal sign, and write them down. You can do any order. I like to put the letters first. That's just my habit. So I'm going to put negative 3x, and I'm going to put that positive 54. I didn't have to do anything. I just wrote them down next to each other. I have successfully moved the term 3x from one side to the other. No craziness happened. Here's where a little bit of craziness happens. We still have to isolate that y, and if this were a simple equation, you'd tell me that you just have to divide by 6. Cool. Here's the thing. You have to divide by 6 for both terms on the right side of the equation, which turns into two separate problems. Okay, we're going to have this big divide section. See how there's a big divide fraction bar? And then we're going to make it into two smaller little divides, where I basically break it apart at any of the operations that I see. I break it apart at the addition sign, since it's the operation I see. I'm going to do negative 3x divided by 6, or negative 3/6x, and 54 divided by 6 as two separate problems. But luckily, I know that negative 3/6 is really just another reduced form of negative 1/2. I can reduce 3/6 to 1/2. And 54 divided by 6, or 54/6, that reduces down to 9. And that right there, my friends, is solved for y. I have the y exactly by itself, and it's isolated and simplified, which is good math form to leave all your problems in. So we're walking through that again, since that's just kind of different. We started off with a literal equation, two variables. We want to solve for this guy, which means we want the y by itself. We picked up and moved the 3x from the left side over to the right side. Since these are not the same, we cannot combine like terms, so we just write them down next to each other. In any order, I like the letter going first. To continue to isolate the y, we have to get rid of the 6, and we know that inverse operations here is to divide. The only problem is we require a big divide, dividing everything on both sides. So we just split it up into manageable pieces. We have a small divide and a small divide. Reduce my numbers using my brain or my calculator, and I have my reduced literal form of this equation that is, as the instructions ask me, solve for y. Now, the TEK talks about scientific and mathematical formulas. So while that example I gave is probably the most usable we'll use in Algebra 1, these are the kinds of equations they're going to be asked in the future to rearrange or derive, which is the mathematical term for that, to derive into different settings. They may be given this Celsius to Fahrenheit translation and asked to solve for Fahrenheit. They may be given distance, rate, and time and solve for the rate. They might be given area of a triangle, which is 1/2 base times height, and said solve for the height. This becomes especially important as we get into higher level classes. So let's look again. This example is again more on the Algebra 1 level, and it asks which of the following is equivalent to 3x minus 4y equals 6. Equivalent means the same, so we know we're just rewriting this. And if we notice all the answer choices start with y, we probably want to rearrange this equation so that it says y equals. So let's practice again. We said that we are going to need to take the 3x term and we're going to need to move it to the other side. Inverse of being positive 3x is being negative 3x. Now, again, I cannot combine 6 and negative 3x because they're not the same. They're not like terms. So I bring everything down, personally write the letter first, and I bring down the 6. Last step, big step, is that big divide. I'm going to divide by -4 on the left and divide by -4 on the right. Now split it up into manageable pieces. That's all we're doing here. All we have left is y equal to, and then we have -3 over -4 with an x next to it, plus 6 divided by -4. If I take my time to reduce both those fractions, I'm going to find out that this actually reduces to 3/4 x minus 3/2. 3/4 x minus 3/2. These are equivalent equations right here, written in two different forms. The second one is just solve for y, as when we solve literal variables for parts. So we would answer our final choice as answer choice J, which matches what we got in our problem. This is another one of those important skills you need before heading up to higher level classes. It's important in Algebra 1, but is especially important when you get into your science classes that require math, especially physics. If you can master this skill for physics or chemistry, the physics and chemistry becomes a lot easier since it's a math-based science. So looking at rewriting equations, understanding how inverse operations work with numbers and inverse operations work with terms is especially important for those upper level math classes and upper level science classes. So always remember, we empower, we impact, we love, we are Skeeter Nation.